Morning, everybody. This is Joni at Joda Software. I'll be hosting the Frankie email marketing webinar today. So today is part one of 2 training sessions for the Frankie email marketing system. Today is all about the contacts and how they got into the system and how we're going to manage and organize them. When I'm done today, I'm going to send you a post-training email. It will look something like this. And in it, we do have some recommended action items. We suggest you complete them before your next session, which most of you are signed up for Thursday. And during that session, we're going to talk about how to create a campaign. So hopefully you get a chance to go in and give it a try. You don't have to complete them. And then there's resources in here and then our help site. So what is Frankie email marketing? It's a way for all your contact information in Jonas Club Management or JCM to be integrated. What happens is every 6 hours an export's going to take place. So if you have any new members or people have updated their information, that's when it's going to be updated into this email marketing system. Once we have this information, we can utilize it for mail merges. We can use it to target particular members at the club, and you can have personalized and professional looking emails. So our agenda today, we're going to talk about how to add contacts. We're going to create and manage segments, groups. Then I'll show you how to manage your contacts. And then I have some resources that will come in handy to help you remember all the information we'll be covering today. Now, it's not a PowerPoint slide presentation today, but I do have some information. So that's why I'm going through the slide right now. So the first thing I like everybody to jot down for me is this URL, Clubhouse Online. .e2ma.net. Doesn't matter which club you belong to, this is the URL to log into the email marketing system. The username is usually your email address. If you don't have one already, after training today, I will let your project coordinator know you completed this with me. And at that point, they should be in process of setting one up for you. One thing to note is your username and password are both going to be case sensitive. If there's inactivity on the site, it will log you out. Once you're logged in, this is the home page. So if you look at the top here, it says home. And up here, instead of webinar training site, you would actually see your club name. We're actually focusing on the audience tab over here. And by default, on the left-hand side, you've already landed on the contacts. So give me 1 second, I'll zoom in for everybody. It's a little better. So audience at the top and contacts on the left. So by default, so remember, all the contacts from Jonas Club Management is going to be exported over here every 6 hours. Ideally, you want everybody to be in this active tab. Those are your contacts that are good and you're going to be working with most of the time. What I want to mention is the email addresses have to be unique in the system. You know, some clubs, every person at the club has their own member number. For example, primary number 123 and spouse has 123A. The problem with this is if they have a shared email address, then only one person will be in the system when we try to send out an email. So if you want to send out an email to all the females, the spouse may not necessarily get it because they're sharing an email address. So ideally, we want you to make sure that each person that has their own number have their own email. So how do we fix it? You go into your Jonas system and change the email address for them. You save it, and then 6 hours later, that information will make it into the email marketing system with the automatic export. Now, if you wanted that change to take place sooner rather than later, we do have instructions in this URL, and it actually looks like this, so that you can follow these steps here. I'm not going to go through them, but once you follow this file path and follow the instructions in here, you can sync it. And that way, within about, it says 3 to 5 minutes, but I give you like 5-10 minutes at least, that person should now be updated with the correct email address. When the information gets exported out of the accounting system, so this is the help site. You can see our mascot up here. This is Frankie. There is how to manage your fields and upload to email marketing. The reason why I'm pointing this out is this here is a list of 28 fields that are pre-selected from your Jonas system that is brought over. But when you do your mail merges or when you want to group somebody by a different field that you have in Jonas, you could add additional fields to bring over and utilize the information. The instructions with the step-by-step are found in here, which I'm not going to cover. Now that the contacts are brought over, they will now be found in this table. And the table is separated into 3 tabs. Active, all the contacts are good. Error will include those that have a incorrect email address. Maybe it was a typo during the data entry process, or a member gave you an old work email and they changed jobs but never told you. And opt-outs will be those that have unsubscribed from emails coming from the club. There are ways to fix all of those errors and opt-outs, but we're going to save that for a little bit later. I just want to talk about the different ways to add contacts right now. So we figured out how to export it. The other one is adding them manually using this Add Contact button on the right-hand side. This is used in the event you wanted to communicate with somebody that isn't in your Jonas system or doesn't have a member number. Some clubs have staff member numbers and some do not. So if you don't have a staff member number and you want to use this for staff communication, hit the Add Contact button in the top right. For training purposes today, remember I said we have to have unique email addresses. I'm going to tag on March 2nd for everything that we do, so you can easily identify the items that we've completed as well. This is my email address. There's 2 spots. You can type it right at the very top, or you can type it in this email address field. I don't want you to sit here and data entry every single field that was brought over, the 28 by default, because the communication between your Jonas and email marketing here is one way. If I did any changes in here, it never updates back into the Jonas system. So all I want you to do is put in the email address, the first name, the last name, and any fields that you think will be helpful when you're doing any mail merges. So a lot of times when I send out the emails, maybe I want to include the title. So let's say something like, Dear Mr. Smith, or instead of just the person's first name. But these are all the fields that would have been brought over. So you would have seen these populated if it was a existing contact, but because we're data entry, I do not want you to type in all of these fields. Now, if anybody notices on the right-hand side, I have something called groups. To begin with, you probably don't have any groups at all. The groups option on the left-hand side, and that's usually where you create them. But while you're in the process of creating a person manually, you can actually add them to a group right away. For example, if this was an employee communication, I can add this joni@march2nd.com easily to employee communication. Or if I didn't get a chance to create the group, I can create it right here with the Create Group button. When I click on it, I can go ahead and create my group name. We're going to uncheck the test group for now. We'll talk about it later, and create. So I can easily add myself to the March 2nd group as well at the same time. The Save and Close button is up at the top. If you had another staff member to add, you can go ahead and hit the Save and Add Another. But I'm just going to go ahead and save. I just added joni@march2nd.com. I'm going to hit the contacts on the left-hand side. And over here, you can easily see the search box. If I type in Joni, it will search for me. I don't have to hit enter or anything. I just have to give it a moment. And what this system does when you're searching is it only allows you to search by 3 things: the first name, the last name, or the email address. So there's my Joni March 2nd. If anybody noticed, my numbers up at the top have changed too. I've only got 4 active, 2 in error, and opt out. I have 1. Now that we know how to add the contacts, let's talk about targeting your audience. It's great to have all your contacts and communicate with them all the time, but sometimes you want to only send it out to a special demographic. They live in a certain state or they're a certain age group. When you get to the campaign section to send out your email, you have to have it organized in one of 3 ways. You either type your person's email address manually every time before you send it out. You can create a segment and a group. A segment is what we call dynamic. Set up some rules and the system will recalculate and find people that have a match. Provided your exports are running, then it's going to be able to recalculate for you every 6 hours or prior to you sending out your next email. Groups are what we call static. What that means is you create it. You saw how easy it was to create a group earlier, but you have to manually pick and choose the people so that they are part of it. So examples could be like a staff or board of directors. In the segments area, we're going to create a brand new segment from scratch. We're going to show you how to view your contacts, how to edit the criteria, and if you don't need that segment anymore, you have the ability of deleting it. Back to the live site. And on the left-hand side, we're going to move to the segments option. When you go into segments, you can see a different table. This table here is listing all the segments that you have ever created. We're going to jump right into creating a segment, and then I'm going to explain what this is and how you can go back and edit. The Create a Segment button in the top right, you're going to name it. I'm going to name it March 2nd, and something we recommend all clubs do in the beginning is at least a segment that encompasses all the members at the club. So I suggest you call it something like All Active Members. Maybe you want to send an email only to your junior or spouse members. Once you name it accordingly, this is an internal name. Your members will never know that they got the email because they're part of this March 2nd segment. Next, you're going to the segment type. And when you click down here, we're going to focus on using the field information first. There are other ways to set up your criteria as well. When you click and scroll down here, you will see fields as a heading, all in caps. And now you can start seeing the 28 fields that were brought over from the accounting system. So I said I wanted to use member status today, so we'll just choose that. And then we got to decide our condition. Contains, equals, these all make sense, but I'm going to point out a few differences in these. Starting off with contains. Contains is what we call a loose match. If I type in active, now your results would vary depending on the statuses that you actually have at the club. After you type in here, just click out of that box and you'll see the contacts and percent of audience recalculated. I don't have a true database, so when your club does active, you probably got a lot more people than just 59 active contacts. This is what we call a loose match of 59 people. I'm going to come into the drop down, I'm going to change it. I want you to write down equals for me. Equals is what we call an exact match. So if I do equals, it doesn't return anything, it's 0. Why? Because it is case sensitive as well. So now when I did it all in caps, it picked up my active people for me. Contains was loose, it didn't matter, it had the letters active in it, I'll find it for you, good to go. But when you use equals, it has to be exactly with matching the upper or lower case as well. Your definition of active members isn't just the active status. You might include your spouse, your honorary people, things like that. So you would use is, in, any of. So I'm actually going to zero this out for a second because it actually tells you to use comma separated values if you choose the is, in, any of condition. So let's use that active again. It's not going to work because when you use is, in, any of, it has to match the casing as well. So I have to do the all caps. So I get that same 59. If I separate by a comma as it indicated, I can go ahead and say maybe a junior. Nope, I don't have any juniors in here. Or is it because junior has to be in all caps? So once I put it in all caps, it added 1, so it's now at 60. And now we can keep going. Maybe I want to add spouse. Sorry, I keep doing it in the wrong casing. But this is what you have to be aware of. Okay. If it doesn't work, it could be the way you worded it. I believe we called it spousal for whatever reason. So you can see it now jumped to 89. So make sure you have the right word to identify that status at your club. That's it. You just created a segment when you hit save in the top right-hand corner. And what will happen is anytime you choose a March 2nd segment, it will go out to these 89 people. But one thing to note is they have to be an active contact. Remember that error and opt-out tabs that we saw? If somebody is in active status in Jonas, but they have actually opted out, they will not get the email. Same with the error people. Something's wrong with the email address, it's not going to send it out, they're not going to get the email. But let's make this a little bit more complicated. Maybe you wanted to add another parameter. They had to be active, junior, and spousal, and they had to be female. You would hit the and button for that. Unless it's a parameter or they live in Florida, then you can use the or parameter. Let's do an and one. And you go through the steps again. Choose your segment type. Scroll down in the fields area. You can go ahead, past it sex, yours might say gender, whatever is set up in your system. And I said contains the letter F, usually identifies female at the club for me. So now it's dropped down to 30 contacts. You can keep adding more criteria if you wish. If you don't need the criteria, use the little X on the right-hand side to get rid of it. But I'm going to hit the or button because I want to add and show you other things you can set up in here as well that will come in handy. So instead of using just the fields, remember that group I created and added myself to earlier? I can add myself to a group or even a subscription. I'll touch upon a subscription in a little bit, but let's add myself to a group. So it's saying I can be in the group or not in a certain group. And we should see our March 2nd. So now it's either March 2nd or one of these. It doesn't matter. I was in the March 2nd, that's one person, so that's why it's 90. Subscriptions are a way for your members to pick and choose topics of information they're interested. So I'm going to sidetrack for a second and continue with the segments, but this is good to know. At the bottom of every email that you send out, this is the footer that I zoomed in on, there's an area called Manage Your Preferences. When your member clicks on the link, they have the ability to pick and choose regular communications that you have at the club. You will not have this to begin with. If you're interested, you can create it. You actually create the name of that subscription, and you put in a little bit of text to describe what it is. Do you have a weekly dining menu? Do you have social activities? Maybe a monthly newsletter. So you can see these toggles here. The member gets to pick and choose which topics they're interested in. And down at the very bottom, they can update their preferences. Maybe I'm interested in golf now. It's warming up the weather out there, so we're going to hit golf. So going forward, if somebody sends out an email to people subscribed to the golf subscription, I will be a part of that group as well. Or I can choose to unsubscribe from all and look at the green toggles with the check marks there. They're all taken out. This is how your members end up in that opt-out tab. So instead of saying, I'm just not interested in social, and they unsubscribe everything, they can't get any emails coming from your club at all. So I'm actually going to leave that, but that is what we can do a subscription for. So in subscription, you only want to send out to people that are interested in your newsletters. And the reason why we're creating all these segments is we're going to try to make sure you get better open rates. Instead of sending out to 1,000 people at the club, you know for a fact only 500 of them like newsletters. Now your target audience is more clear and your open rates will look a lot better. There's one more at the bottom I want to show you. So instead of using the subscription or the groups at the top for audience, if you scroll down way past all your fields, almost there, responses. So what you can do is maybe you send out an email and people didn't open it. So if I scroll down a little bit more, you can see you have a link in your email and they didn't click it. So what you can do is choose maybe people that have not opened any email or a particular email. I want to see who didn't open my February 19th. But remember, I still had this or parameter. So truthfully, you might have just have one criteria instead of the combination that I have now. So now the email only goes out to people that didn't open my Friday updates. I'm going to delete this second criteria here, and we're going to save the 89 contacts we have for active, junior, and spousal today. That's it. You just created a segment. You can see the details at the top. The name, the number of people, the percentage of all your contacts. Down below is a different table. This table only has two columns, the email and when they were a contact at the Jonas Club Management System. You can only search for them by email address, as you can see in the search box. Earlier, we had the ability to search people by first name, last name, or email. But it's very particular, you need the full email address. So for example, if I wanted to see if my friend Jackson was added in or I changed something, I can't just type Jackson. He's at the top of the list right now. Once I type in Jackson, it says no Jacksons found. You actually have to put in the @aol.com. If you had a brand new member added, you want to make sure they made it into the segment. That's how you have to find them. You have to type in the entire email address. If you do click on their email address, it takes you into their contact details area. I'm just going to zero this back out. Up at the top here, you do have the ability of editing your criteria. But what I want you to notice is when you scroll down, I have 89 contacts, but it stops. That is not 89 contacts. So if you wanted to make sure, take a quick spot check of those 89 people, you can click on Actions, and you actually have to export it. It goes into an export area, and you can download the CSV file to see who those 89 people are. Other options here is you can easily add this segment into a group. You can change your status to version 2, or you can archive all of them. Again, I wouldn't archive them. Archive is a way of saying delete. So you don't really want to delete your contacts. But what you want to possibly do in here is export. So you want to export everybody, or maybe just your actives. And once you export, it's saying you can visit that export area right away, right now, by clicking on this link. Or you can continue what you're doing and later on click in the top corner of the account and choose exports. So let's continue what we're doing, and I'll show you the exports later. What if you look in this list and you realize that somebody should not be on here? For example, Ackerman. You know for a fact that Ackerman was just on the phone with you and you changed them from an active status to a resigned. The criteria isn't matching. So why is Ackerman still showing up? Possibly because you saved and the export hasn't taken place. So once the export has taken place, Ackerman should no longer be in this all active members segment. You can never delete anybody from a segment. They're only in here based on the criteria that you set up. Let's go to segments on the left. There's that table we started off with. There's the internal segment name. Over here is the number of people that belong into that segment. And this one's a little confusing. The last run date is when you last manually hit a refresh button. So I'm going to go back into the segment to show you what I'm referring to. But even though some of these dates are very old, this was like January 19th, it doesn't mean that this is incorrect. What it does do before you send out an email to that segment, it will recalculate, but visually on this screen, the member count and last run date does not update unless you go into it by clicking on the segment name, and then there's a tiny refresh button up at the top right here. So say January 19th, 100 contacts. When you refresh it manually, that's when the date and time will change and the contacts. Even though it did say 100, if I didn't hit that refresh button and did send an email to this particular segment today, it still would have sent to 89 people. So this screen is just a visual when you last manually hit the refresh button. So it's a little confusing on that one. I don't know why they did it that way, but trust that it is recalculating and going to the right number of people. But if you want peace of mind, you can always refresh yourself, run your export, take a look at that spreadsheet before you send your emails out. If there's a segment that you've created and you no longer need it, you can check the little box and you can archive. So in this program, archive is the same as delete. Once you delete it, it will be found in the archive section, and you do have the ability of restoring it if you archived it by mistake. Or you can delete it permanently at that point. Because maybe you only needed that special segment for a particular reason on one email blast, and after that you didn't need it anymore. So you can always get rid of it so you have a cleaner table of segments that you use regularly. And on the right hand side, you can see if you click on the triangle, you have these options as well. You can open to see the details, you can edit the criteria, you can export, rename, duplicate. Maybe you wanted to do something for all your females and then something similar for all the males. So instead of having to start from scratch, you can duplicate it and go in and just change that one value. And of course, archive, which is your delete. That is segments. Left hand side is groups. Groups has a table that looks a little different. We have at the top a regular 9 groups, and we have test 2 of them. Similarly, I'm going to go to the create a group button on the right first, and we'll come back and explain what's going on in the table. When you create a group, you saw how easy it was earlier. You simply name it. This time I want to create a proofread group. So at the very least, I want everybody to create a proofread group. The reason why is even if it's just one person, it's always good to test things out. Or maybe you have different email addresses like Outlook, Gmail, AOL. Your email will show up differently in different programs. So maybe you want to test it out yourself. If it's a test group, this is going to come in handy when we create our campaigns and you want to send a preview to yourself. Your name will be easily found in that test group. Test group usually has a max of 10 people, so it'll be just fellow staff members that you want to double check things before it goes out to your entire membership base. That's what the test is usually good for. And once you hit create, you just created another group. So you can see in the test tab, there's our March 2nd proofread group. In this table, you can see the group name, again, is internal, is not available for your members to see. Number of active contacts, people have opted out, and the error contacts. So now we have to add somebody into my proofread. To do that, you have to make your way back to the contacts on the top left. When you're in the contacts area, you simply pick and choose the people you want to add into the respective group. You can do a name search and find particular people, but I'm just going to randomly choose some people here. Once you check the little box beside their email address, you click on Actions and you choose Add to Group. You can add to a regular group. So we'll see our March 2nd we did in the beginning. In the test area, you can also see the March 2nd proofread. You can add them to as many groups that they would belong to, or if you forgot to create one, you can create and add a group here. Well, I have enough groups, so I'm not going to create another one today. I'm going to hit add. So what it's telling you is all they've done is they've copied these email addresses into the groups. We didn't move it, so they can still be part of other groups and segments as well. But if you don't need them anymore, you actually have to manually get rid of them. It doesn't update on its own like the segments. Let's close that. I'm going to add an error one just to illustrate. So chances are people got emails before, but something happened to their email address after. So I'm just going to check the boxes, actions, add to groups, and let's put them into just this one here. Now let's go to the groups on the left-hand side to see who belongs in the groups. If I scroll down, you can see our March 2nd. We've got the active contacts, we've got the error contacts. So even though there's 6 people in here, when the email goes out, it's only going to go out to the 4. It doesn't bother sending it to those 2 people. If you click on the name of the group, it will list those people in the respective tabs, my actives and my errors. Now this time around, if you realize that A. Morrison shouldn't have been placed on this group and it was done in error, you can check the box, and in actions, you can remove from group. You're not deleting them, you're simply removing them so they're no longer part of this group. It's going to say, are you sure? You remove them. And that's how you can manually add or remove a contact in a group area. You still have your export option up at the top. So if you wanted to export everybody that is in this group, you can go ahead and export. If you want to export everybody, that's fine. And we'll take a look. We should have 2 exports in that area when we check later. If I go back up to groups, similar to the segments, if you only needed a particular group for a particular communication, you no longer need it, you can go ahead and check the box. And when you do that, archive button shows up at the top. Or on the right-hand side, you can open it to see the details. You can export, rename, and archive as well. So let's archive the January 19th. I actually don't need this anymore. And archive. That is groups. Actually, I just want to point out one more thing in the March one is the table, when you're in the groups area, is the same as when we're going to the contacts area. The only one that looked different was the segments. Remember, the segments only had one column. It was the email address, and you can only search by email. In here, if you're looking for a particular person, you can still search by first name, last name, or email. But what I want to do right now is go to the actual contacts table at the top. The first thing I want to talk about is in the active tab, we have the email address column. The email address column is always going to be the first column in your table. You see the tiny triangle beside it? This tells me that it's now sorting in ascending order. If I click email again, it now sorts everybody in descending order. You can actually click on any of the column headings to sort them. Column display right now, I actually have 8 columns showing. Depending on the day you're looking for people, sometimes you want a different column of information. So what you can do is you can change the column display using this button up here. At most, you can have 10 columns showing at one time. I have 8. Let's clear that out and choose what I want to be looking at when I'm working in here today. I want the first name, the last name, member status, member number, and maybe email address type to distinguish between main and business email addresses my members might have. And then you click Save. So now it looks a little bit cleaner. What if you wanted the member number to show up in front of first name? So you can't quite click and drag. Try to click and drag to show you. Oh, it's sorted by member number now. So you can't click and drag. What you can do is on the left-hand side, there is a contact fields option. When you click on contact fields, it now opens up all the fields that were brought over from your accounting system. It's very simple. You just click on the 6 dots beside the field name and you drag it. Did you want it to be in front of first name? And that's it. There's no need to save. Once you click and drag, it changes the order that the fields will show up in the table and also when you're editing a contact info. So let's go to contacts and you'll be able to see the member status is the first field now. If I go back to column display now, it's also changed the order. Member status is up at the very top. I'm just going to cancel out of there. I'm going to keep what I have. Another thing I want to emphasize is in Jonas, a lot of times it might be easier to search somebody by member number. So out of habit, if you try to search somebody by number here, so you see 122, right? The first person, it's going to come back, sorry, we don't have anybody with that member number. Even if I try to put the leading zeros, it's not going to find that person because it only searches by first name, last name, and email address in this table. So to get out of this screen, you can easily zero out of the search box by clearing it out, or you can click contacts on the left or contacts up at the top above active. So now you can search again by first name, last name, or email. I just wanted to show you the contact details. So let's say a member calls you up and says, how come I didn't receive that newsletter last month? Once you find them, you click on the person's email address. When you click on the person's email address, you're going to see all the details. You can see when they were a member, what status they have, how many emails had ever been sent to them. Do they open the emails when they get them? And if there's a hyperlink, are they actually clicking on the links to see information? Down below in the contact details, I wanted to point out that the member status field has also moved in this screen as well. Over here on the right-hand side, remember the groups we added people to? This is where you can see what groups they currently belong to, and also the subscriptions that they belong to. What I want to show you though is if you edit, it does allow you to potentially type in the fields, but don't type in here because if the address was wrong, you change it here, it never goes back into Jonas. So please change it in Jonas, save it, it will sync into here when it gets a chance in that auto 6 hours. But on the right-hand side, you can easily add and remove people to the groups, which we saw, but the subscriptions I didn't talk about earlier. The subscriptions, remember you saw how it's only part of newsletters and dining? If I called and said, oh, I don't want dining anymore, the staff can easily remove me so that I don't get the dining emails anymore, but I can't add somebody back in. So somebody called and said, oh, can I get those golf emails again? And you see opted out. Notice I'm trying to click here. It doesn't do anything. The reason why is because your member actually made the decision themselves. Remember when they clicked on this Manage Your Preferences? It opened up this screen and they chose for themselves what they wanted and didn't want. So if they've opted out from something, then you need to respect their decision that they don't want it. So that's why you can't opt back in. So how can your members start getting golf information again, even though you can't help them? Hopefully they still have an old email lingering around and they can hit the manage button in the bottom and get to the screen and add themselves. If not, we can show you how to create an email with a nice update preferences button. So you can send them an email. So instead of looking at the bottom of the email for this tiny button, it's right in the middle and they can easily choose which topics they're interested coming from the club again. So that's what the subscription, if you choose to set these up, how you can help them in adding or removing themselves. And once you make the changes, of course, you can hit the save button up at the top. And there's another tab, because my example was in this emails tab. How do I know if somebody got an email? So down here, you can see the last 63 emails that I've ever received. So the last one was the Friday updates on February 19th. You can see when it was delivered, I received it, but I never ended up opening it or clicking on it based on the green check marks and the red X. If you click on any of these, it will take you into the reporting so you can dive into more specific details. So that's how you can look up a member's information. I'm going to go back up to contacts right now. For your errors, let me just show you something as well. So we did segments, we did groups, showed you how to sort, display, search, contact details, and emails. So we're moving on to the errors and opt-outs now. So these are your errors. This includes hard bounces, you might have heard that from other programs, or email addresses with formatting issues. There is a reason column, and these are the reasons that you will see. Delivery, wrong email. Changed manually, a staff member noticed that it was wrong and they changed it manually. Or formatting, maybe you put in the symbols in the wrong spots. So those are the reasons that you would be able to see. I'm just going to somebody. So right here is how a staff member can easily change them from active to error, or even opt out. The member says, I don't want to get emails at all coming from this email marketing system. You can actually opt out on their behalf. So that's how you can manually change them. But if you go into the error tab, this is where the reason, usually it's delivery unless it's changed manually, as you see here for a couple of people. But one thing to notice, once I do a name search, the reason column actually disappears. I don't know why it does that, but just so you know, if I search for Joni now and go to error, it doesn't show the reason column anymore. So that is how they would have showed up in the error area, but how do you fix it? So to fix it, there are two things that have to happen. We have to do something in the Jonas management system, and we also have to do something in the Frankie email marketing. Now, which order you do this in doesn't matter, but I usually recommend you do the contacting and changing it in Jonas first. So I have here just basically going to the edit member area for the member, wait the 6 hours, it will update in there, right? And in Frankie, as soon as you call them and edit the information, you can go ahead and fix it in error as well. So it moves back into the active tab. Now, if you have a lot of people in the error area, so for example, if I don't search for my name, in the error tab, we have 48 people. What I would recommend you do is run an export, because that way you have a list of the contacts that you need to reach out to find out why they are not getting the emails coming from the club. So maybe you want to delegate to another staff member. So let's export another one. So in here, all you're going to do is fix it in Jonas, save it. As soon as you got off the phone with Mark here, all you're going to do is check the little box beside his email. You click on actions and choose change status, and you're going to choose active. So now this person will be moved back in. So you'll see the numbers will change. The 116 and 48, it's now 117 and 47. You just move that person. And that's all you have to do to fix your error contacts. Now, if you wanted to move all 47 people all at once to the active area, you can. Don't check any of the boxes. And now you can change the status of all of them at once if you prefer to do it that way. So we're going to move on to the opt-out. So opt-outs, if you used other programs, are those that have actually unsubscribed from getting emails. Sorry, I'm just going through these slides here. But a lot of times what we have in conversation is, oh, I thought I was going to stop getting the newsletters. I didn't realize I'd stop getting the dining emails when I did that. So that's where the subscriptions come in handy. But they do opt out. And how did it happen? One, I showed you how the administrator can easily change them from active to opt out. Or at the very bottom with that update preferences button in the footer, they could opt out. So it actually doesn't matter if they hit opt out or the manage button. It actually takes them to the exact same screen because we actually let them know, by the way, are you sure you want to opt out, or do you want to just change the subscriptions that you're interested in? But if they do check and update preferences, they have now opted out. So how do you fix them? These are just the screenshots that I just walked you through, and that's how the member goes through it. And in here, it's basically a double opt-in process. Two things have to happen. One, a form has to be completed. That could either be done by the staff member, or you can send it to your member and they do the first step. The second step is in the email. There's going to be a hyperlink that your member has to click on so that it confirms that they actually want to get emails coming from the club again. This is a sample of what the form looks like, and this is the sample of the email. So they just have to click on the link in the email, and that will now move them from the opt-out tab back into the active. So going forward, if they are part of any groups or segments that we learned how to create today, they will get the communication when those are selected in the email campaign. So where do you find all these forms? There is 3 ways for you to access them. There is a sign up link at the bottom of an old email. So assuming they didn't delete any emails coming from your club before, they can easily click on the sign up link. There is a resubscribe form right in the Frankie email marketing. And if you have our Clubhouse Online website, there's actually a page we would have created for you so that that link actually resembles your club's website. So let's show you the footer one first. So down at the very bottom of an email is the sign up. If they click on sign up, this will pop open. At this point, your member would just type in their email address, say I'm not a robot, and when they submit, they're looking for that email. Once they click on the link, that's it. They're done. If you're in the admin side, you can go on the left-hand side, there's forms. If you click on forms, you will have a resubscribe form. Click on it, and on the right-hand side, there's something called publish this sign-up form. After you do it the first time, you can actually bookmark this URL. So don't copy what I have here. Every club is going to have their own unique URL. You just need the first one up at the very top. Control-C to copy it. Open up a new tab and Control-V. You're going to see it's exactly the same form when they clicked in the bottom of their email. So at this point, you can either do this step for them. You do part 1 and they do the second step. Or you can take this URL and email it to your member because maybe you have Outlook. Now, the third way is assuming you have our Clubhouse Online website. And if this page does not show up in your content tree within your website, please let us know. So this is the Clubhouse Online website. Not sure if everybody's seen this yet, but what normally happens is after you log in like you normally do to the Clubhouse Online website, you can switch to the back end. Sorry, let me just show you what that looks like. So in the top right-hand corner, this is our Mystic River Country Club site demo. You click on your name and you'll have a switch to Club Central option. As soon as you switch to Club Central, it brings you to a page that looks like this. You would choose the green book pages. In it is this left area here. We call this the content tree. And you should have a page that's called Frankie email subscription or just email subscription. It's a hidden page. Your members don't actually see this page on your website right across the navigation bar at the very top. You can grab it under properties, general. When you come down, there's a live URL. Once you have this URL, you can bookmark it. And as you can see, all we did is added extra things on top and below. It looks exactly like the one you grabbed in the forms area. Personally, I like grabbing the one in the forms area. I do part 1. I just tell them, check your inbox or junk box, click on that link in that email, and you'll get emails coming from us again. That is how you have 3 ways to help your member resubscribe to get communication coming from the club again. Okay, so sorry, these are just kind of all the instructions. This is just a quick recap of the things that we covered. You'll learn how to add your contacts. They can be exported out of the Jonas Club Management System, or you can manually add them. Ideally, most of your contacts should come from your Jonas system. Then I showed you how to take those contacts and organize them into segments and groups. And then finally, we walked you through on how to manage your contacts if they've fallen into the errors or the opt-outs, and how to search and find things. I forgot to show you the exports. Let me go back in here. Because I created the exports, I didn't show you how to get to them. On the top right, I don't think yours says sub-account settings. I think it just has your name, because my access is a little different. Come down to the bottom to your exports. If we had come in here immediately, I want you to note in the status column, you would not have seen a green check mark. You would have actually seen a clock icon. What that means is it's still processing. So that means it's not ready. Once you have the green check mark, it means it's ready. This is the export name. You can click on it to actually download the CSV file. You can see when it was created. And over here, you can see it's only available for 7 days. After that, it will be dropped out of this export area. That's okay, because at that point, your contacts would have probably changed and it's out of date anyways. So at that point, you run a new export and you have new information to work with. On the far right-hand side, you have the triangle, and it just allows you to download the export. Truthfully, I usually just click on the name of the export, and then it starts processing. So once it's finished downloading, in the bottom left, you would just open it up, and then you'd be able to see the contact information. Or maybe it's your colleague that's going to help you out with this task. You can easily email it over to them. So I'm not going to read all the columns. I know it's hard to see, but it's got the email. If you go across, you're going to be able to see all the field information. I don't have a true database. That's why I have a lot of empty fields. So hopefully you'll have more things populated in your database for all your members. So that is the exports. I'm just going to minimize that. The other thing is the archive. If you deleted something, you realize, whoops, I still needed that segment. I need it for one more email blast. In the sub-account settings or your name, you would find archived items. And it's actually grouped into different tabs. So depending what you archived, you'll find it respectively. So in the groups, I think we did this one together earlier, January 19th. Yep, you can see when we did it. And on the right-hand side, you can restore it back, or you can delete it permanently. And then I think we did one for segments. We didn't archive a segment, but if we did, you would have found it in here as well. The final thing I wanted to show you though is if you click on your name, again, mine's a little different, you might see a help tab. I do not want you to use this help tab because I want you to notice the help site is a little different. I kept showing you one that said Frankie and it had a little dog mascot. That one is the one that's integrated with Jonas. This one is not. So you're going to be able to find information, but not everything is going to be applicable. So make sure when you open up the thank you for attending email with the action items, when you go to this is the Frankie help site you want, and you'll know because of the mascot. If you ever have any questions, you can contact support down at the bottom. It's the same phone number if you ever called for web support for the website and email address, but this is the correct help site. So if anything, you may want to bookmark this. So that is the part 1, Frankie email marketing, all about the contacts today. I will be sending you that action item email shortly. Hopefully you get a chance to at least create one segment to encompass all of your contacts and one group as a proofread group. And the subscriptions, if anybody's interested in creating those dining newsletters that they can choose from, you can follow the subscription center links here and it'll take you to the help site. Thank you so much for your time today, everybody. Have a great day.